The poem The Little Vagabond Boy was written by William Blake, where he envisions a world where religion and bodily pleasure are not deemed as opposing forces. In this poem, Blake was critical of the organized religion as he found their conventions to be repressive and controlling. Through the clever use of diction and structure, Blake has therefore effectively emphasized the futility of diminishing childhood play and exposes the hypocrisy of the church for their failure to nurture the society.
Blake introduces the controversial idea that religion and self-pleasure can coexist, as he believes that pleasure is not sinful, unlike what the church presents it as. In stanza 2, the quote, "But if at the church they would give us some ale, and a pleasant fire our souls to regale," Blake illustrates the sensation of pleasure by presenting a vision of the church where these restrictions are relaxed in favor of a more indulgent and pleasurable experience. By rhyming ale with regale, which means to entertain or amuse someone, he juxtaposes the church and its oppressive practices with the idea of providing ale, which is seen as sinful, as it is associated with alcoholism and drunkenness. This highlights the church's tendency to repress pleasure and physical comfort, which Blake heavily criticizes. In the quote, "We'd sing and we'd pray all the livelong day, nor ever once wish from the church to stray." Blake shows how the speaker, which is a child, wonders why the church couldn't be more like an alehouse, because if the church was more like this, then it would be far more pleasurable to attend. He wouldn't ever consider straying away from the church environment. This shows how it is not a problem of unwillingness to attend the church. Instead, the problem lies within the church and what they do. The third stanza, there is the quote where it says, "Then the parson might preach and drink and sing." In this quote, a parson is an ordained Christian person responsible for a small area. And since parsons do not typically associate with the actions listed, preach and drink and sing, Blake enforces the idea that religion and pleasure should not need to oppose each other. The synthetic listing makes the poem sound childlike, highlighting the speaker's naivety. And the rule of 3 of preach and drink and sing. From this, the pairing of preach and drink is particularly striking, as it suggests that both actions can be done together, blurring the lines between the oppressive nature of church and worldly pleasures. This juxtaposition highlights Blake's disillusionment with organized religion, which he perceives as hypocritical and detached from the joys of everyday life.
Now, moving on to our next point, Blake portrays the church as hypocritical and repressive, as he enforces his criticism of the church for their apathy towards the children's suffering. This is firstly evident in the very opening of the whole poem, where he writes, dear mother, the church is cold." Firstly, the repetition of dear mother and dear mother evokes the naivety voice style of the speaker, as Blake indicates that the speaker of the poem is a child. This effectively draws sympathy for the little vagabond boy, as children are typically innocent and therefore vulnerable to the oppressive conventions of the church. Moreover, the repetition of dear mother evokes desperation, and effectively indicates how the little vagabond boy is pleading for the mother's care and love, suggesting that the church imposes an environment that is so harsh and cruel that the vagabond boy feels unwelcome and unsafe. Lastly, the church is also described as cold by the boy. Cold, being a typical symbol for cruelty and injustice, suggests how the church represses and abuses a child instead of nurturing him with the religious teachings. Through this, Blake effectively makes his question the conventions of the religious system from abusing the innocent, such as the vagabond boy. Another example of the cruelties where the church is imposed as hypocritical and cruel is when Blake writes, "And modest Dame Church, who is always at church, would not have bandy children nor fasting nor birch." The use of diction of lurch effectively indicates the detrimental impact that the church brings on the people, as lurch connotes with stagger, stumble, and unsteadiness, suggesting that the church has staggered its people, meaning that they have ruined the people as a whole. Moreover, The rhyming couplets church and birch enforces Blake's criticism that the church ultimately torments the children through their strict and oppressive traditions. By juxtaposing church and birch through end focus, Blake also suggests how the organized religion starved the children of their joy and innocence, since birch directly connotes with the imagery of a skinny tree. The effective diction and rhyming scheme is overall effective in challenging the organized religion for having repressed the youth and the society rather than carrying the designated role, which is to establish the good through God's teachings.
In conclusion, The Little Vagabond shows Blake's perspectives of the church's oppressive natures, as he suggests that the church is too focused on sin and guilt, and that this is preventing people from enjoying life. He believes that pleasure is a natural part of human experience and can be a source of spiritual fulfillment, therefore saying that it should not be suppressed and should also not be seen as something incompatible with religion. While the purpose of having religion is to bring people together and create a sense of unity, this will not be achieved if the church remains strict and oppressive, leaving no room for joy.